And we're live. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching across Canada and around the world. We have our all-star guest panel here, and Steven's back. So, hey, Steven. And we have our
Hello, everyone.
we have our very special guest today, Alberto Moretti from the great country of Italy, out of Milan. Is that correct, Alberto?
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, I'm based in Milan, north part of Milan.
Well, thank you so much for being here, taking your Friday afternoon to be with us. I guess we could start with about Alberto. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the industry, how long you've been with Trotec. Just give us a brief.
Thank you, Lev. I am 52 years old. I have 2 daughters and a good wife from Sicily. Based in Milan, I have been eating bread and laser for the last 25 years of my life. And I spent something like 15 years at a company called Rofin, manufacturing laser sources. And then I joined Trotec in 2014. So this year is going to be my 6th year at Trotec. So I have quite a good experience in the laser industry, and I was very happy, very pleased to join to join Trotec in 2014 because it opened a lot of different opportunities for my career, and I learned a lot. And it's very entertaining, and we have a lot of fun over here in Italy.
Perfect. So, and how many offices do you guys have in Italy of like Trotec?
We have, let's call it a headquarter here in Milano. Then we have a showroom in Roma, a showroom in Bologna, and a showroom in Padua, which is nearby Venice.
Oh, very cool.
And then we have the southern part of the country, which is basically a total different world compared to the north part of the country, where we're organized through resellers. So we got 5 or 6 different resellers. They're taking care about the sales down in the south, and we're selling through them.
Oh, awesome. So I guess we have a tradition to ask, what is the weirdest thing that you've ever seen engraved?
Okay, I can tell a couple of weird things that we have engraved. A couple of weeks ago, we had a guy here with a stockfish. He wanted the stockfish to be engraved, and it was, the engraving process was very good, but the think out of it was terrible, unfortunately. Yes. It was very bad, I tell you.
Sorry, did you say stockfish? What's a stockfish?
A stockfish, it's a kind of a dry fish. It's a big dried fish. We call it stockfish. I don't know whether it's an English expression that you don't have in Canada, but it's a dried fish from a lake. Okay,
and how did the engraving go?
So it's dried up, and then it's pretty stinky because they put it under the sun for a couple of weeks before they sell it. And this guy wanted to have it engraved with his logo and everything. So it worked out because it's a natural thing. So it's a fish. So engraving with a CO2 is fantastic, but it stinks like hell.
Yikes. Well, that's definitely a new one for me.
Yeah, and the second thing, which is basically a lifesaver, I can't tell you the name of the company because it's covered by an NDA, but we had the pericardium of the heart of a cow being processed, because with this pericardium they make heart valves, and this was processed. You can use different lasers. At the very end, we process it with a CO2 laser at the very low energy rate. But we normally use ultra short pulse laser. But in this case, the CO2 was perfect. So this is another weird thing that I've seen.
I know this company, Alberto, because they have a branch here in Vancouver too. Yeah.
Don't mention it.
Okay. Yeah.
So
exactly. That's the company.
So somebody's asking if you meant starfish, but I don't think you meant like an actual, like it's an actual fish. It's not a starfish.
I don't know. I tell you, we name it stockfish also in Italian. So
so it is a starfish.
There's no stockfish.
Stockfish, but I don't know.
Not starfish.
Stockfish.
Yeah.
Yes, Tio.
But I don't
Okay.
know whether it sounds, if it doesn't sound familiar to you. Basically, I think it doesn't exist at your place, in your place. So, but it's a fish from a lake.
Yeah, because I don't think there's starfish in lakes, right? I mean, those are
We do
usually...
stock our fish we stock our lakes with fish, but I don't think it's the same thing.
Yeah, like this is a starfish. Like I think that's what they're talking
Type in
about.
stockfish.
No.
Type in stock.
They also
Type in
call it,
stockfish.
in English, it's called pike.
Oh,
Okay, a pike. Yeah.
Oh,
We have
pike. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we
Pike.
have lots of pike here. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. So
That's a
dried stockfish. Very cool.
Exactly.
Ugly. Yeah.
Very cool. So, Alberto, if I mean, we know Italy is one of the first countries that was hit by the COVID-19 crisis pretty heavily. I mean, how did it affect you guys? I mean, how did it affect your customers? Anything you can tell us would be good information.
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, in Europe, Italy was the first country to be hit by the virus. So we had the first casualties at the beginning of February. So we have been experiencing the lockdown starting from the middle of Feb until 10 days ago. So of course the economy was completely flat so far, and it still is flat so far. And the majority of our customers had to close down their activities because the only activities that were meant to stay open were those related to manufacturing of PPEs and stuff like that. And the rest of the country was stopped, completely stopped. And unfortunately, we think from the last surveys that we had from the government last week, we think that almost 35% of the small and medium-sized company will not open again.
Really?
So the impact was really bad, still is bad. We as Trotec have been selling quite a few machines for manufacturing face shields, for example. But if I compare this year to last year, same time, we have minus 57% in sales.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, it was very bad. And now, as I said, 10 days ago, we had the possibility to reopen, but it's very slow. So I think the whole process will take a few months before it comes a little bit up. It crops up a little bit. And we expect to have something in the range of normality after summer vacation.
Mm-hmm. And I know that Madreperla, our manufacturer for acrylics, is based out of Italy. I mean, in Canada, at least, acrylics have been very hard to come by for the wall shields, for protectors. I mean, you guys are in Italy, so do you have the same kind of experience? Do you see shortages with acrylic? Are you selling more acrylic?
Yeah, basically we cannot get a hold of it.
Really?
Even though Madreperla is just around the corner because it's about 10 kilometers from here, they have a shortage of, I mean, first of all, the government completely stopped their possibility to sell to third parties, if not to the government itself, for a couple of 2 months. I would say 2 months, yes. And then they have started again the production for third parties. There's such a shortage, it's such a high demand that you barely can buy plexiglass or acrylics, especially on 5mm thickness, which is the most requested one. So we had the possibility to buy 200 sheets last week, but to get them, it will take something like 45 days. So unfortunately, wow. There's a high shortage of plexiglass, and even the PET, it's quite rare at the moment, especially on the 0.4, 0.5mm gauge, because it's used for face shields as well. So it's becoming more rare than the gold, I would say.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like our suppliers, the company that Trotec owns out of North Carolina, we were lucky enough that we get PET material from them. But yeah, acrylic has definitely been a challenge to get at this point.
It is.
Okay, so I guess we'll start with our priority questions. Our first one is from Marcus out of Austria. I see the masking tape and this clear synthetic paper very often used by Trotec Canada YouTube channels. Why doesn't Trotec Austria offer that? So, a couple of things about the consumables. So every subsidiary of Trotec almost runs like a separate entity, especially with consumables. We have to outsource and source local materials. Now we have materials that are centrally controlled by through Austria, like the Lamacoid sheets, like the acrylic that we mentioned. But things like the synthetic paper, and I think this is what they're talking about. This is the stuff that we get in Canada. Alberto, do you guys sell this stuff in Italy?
No, we don't. We don't.
Do you have any? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, we normally tell customer how to procure it, but we don't sell it directly.
Is there a lot of demand for this stuff? I mean, I've had Europeans ask about this stuff specifically.
Yeah, masking is pretty popular, I would say. So in many cases, we are asked to provide those kinds of protective films and stuff like that, but we don't sell it directly.
Yeah, that's just like a standard transfer mask that you'd have like for transferring vinyl letters from a carrier and then putting it on something. So, but just one thought there too, Lev, is that Canada, as usual, is leading the world in everything. So that's why they can only get it in Canada, nowhere else. So yes. So I just wanted to clarify that is the reason. So
that's because we have Mike Clark.
Yeah. And Jim.
Do you guys recommend any hardware store, not by name, but where can people get this stuff if not from direct distributors? I mean, can they go to like paint supply stores or something like that and get this?
No, you have to go to you want to go to like a sign, somebody supplying product into the sign industry. So, that's typically where you would get that from. So we do have it in Canada, we do have it in varying widths too. I think 6, 8, and 12 inch, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So, but a lot of times you can get that from a sign supplier in the industry. There's lots of people, that are supplying that locally. So
yeah, the industry term is called transfer tape. If they're looking
transfer
for
tape,
tape, yeah.
And Mike, go ahead. Sorry, Mel.
Yeah, no. The only difference between that and the regular masking tape, this one is a medium tack, so it's not really that sticky.
Exactly. Yeah. It
Mike,
comes off easy.
Yeah, can you explain why somebody would want this kind of tape?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is, as you can see on the video, it's there for using, it's for getting a half decent image when you want to do photographs on glass. The problem with glass is if you bare engrave it, a lot of times it tends to shard. You'll get little pieces of glass. So the masking tape or wet newspaper, you can also use wet newspaper, will give you more of a smooth finish, almost like a light sand etching on the product. Give you more detail. So that's why I use it exclusively for doing photographs, because if you're not using the mask, then you won't get as good a results with photographs as you would if you were bare engraving it. The other reason I use it is you can see the size of that piece that's going on. If I put wet newspaper on there, probably a quarter of the way through the job, the wet newspaper probably gets sucked off the glass by the exhaust.
It dries out pretty good.
It dries out really quickly. So this is more, and this is consistent. I always say to people, what is wet? Right? Like wet is, and depends on the newspaper you're using. This is always consistent. So I could come up with a material setting for this material, and it's always going to be the same. If I was to say to an operator, make the newspaper wet, well, they're going to say, well, how do I make it wet? So again, do I put that under, running water? Do I use a spray bottle with it? How do I make it wet? And then, newspaper can vary, greatly depending on where you're from. So this is always consistent. So it's always why I like to use it. And I can tell you right now that you can't do photographs on glass unless you have the transfer mask.
And it's absorbing the greater part of the beam, right? It's letting through the most intense part of the beam, which is why it's so great for photographs, because your dot size is so much smaller.
Well, you don't get the fracturing. Like if you really zoom in, and I have some nice zoom on one of my videos, got zoom pictures, but the fracture is a lot smaller. Like when you laser engrave glass, it fractures. So what happens is that the fractures are smaller when you use the mask than they are if you don't use the mask. And I think what happens is it's those larger fractures is why the glass will separate from, like, the little pieces will come off, but you also have less detail. And I think that has to do with the smaller fractures in the actual glass itself. So if you were to zoom, I have a magnifying glass here, you know, the one that Lev knocked off and broke.
Electric ones?
Yeah, the electric one, and it can zoom in really fast.
I came in early.
Play marketing.
Hey, Mike, James, some people I heard they're using dishwashing soap, so they spread it on the glass. Have you guys tried that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
works. It works okay, but not as good as the
as good as the
mask.
no, it's not consistent. I mean, you could theoretically use masking tape if you wanted to. It's just not wide enough, right? So that's the problem. This stuff is wide. It's consistent. The biggest problem you can see is I was using an X-Acto knife because sometimes you'll get air bubbles on it. So again, I'll just use the X-Acto knife to prick it a little bit to try to force the air out of that, because you want it. Go ahead.
I was just saying, on a really curved surface, it's very hard to get the transfer tape consistent because it binds up on the outside corners. So that's why a lot of people try anything, and the soap thing's okay. And as you said, it's inconsistent. If you have large parts of photographs, you can see kind of where you've got thicker soap and where it's thinner, but it does absorb a little bit of the sort of outside energy of the beam, but not as good as the transfer mask for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the trick to that is if you're doing a curved surface is that when you cut your pieces, and if you want to use wet newspaper, that works, is you want to make that rectangle the size of what you're etching, right? So the bigger the mask is, the more you're going to interact, you know, with the curvature, which then causes creases in the transfer mask and everything like that. So normally what I do is I put like a big rectangle on, say that's like the steel table. I'll put a big rectangle of transfer mask. And then what I'll do is I'll cut smaller rectangles out of that bigger rectangle. Yeah. And then I'll just peel off and then stick on the glass. If you're doing the wine glass, it doesn't really matter where it is, you know, in relationship to the piece, because there's no handle or anything where you're having to line up with that. So as long as you get it in the close proximity, it works. But sometimes on a glass, I'll switch back to to wet newspaper, and then I'll turn the exhaust down. And as I say to everybody, always very important with the exhaust to have a damper on there on the back, so that you can restrict some of the airflow on the back of your exhaust, just for specific situations where you want to reduce the airflow, and you're not really too worried about smoke because you're not generating a lot of smoke because the paper is wet, so it doesn't generate a lot of smoke. So.
And Mike, when you use these transfer tape, you on glass, you focus on the surface, or you have to go a little bit deeper into
I focus right on the surface. Takes a little bit more power than if you're raw engraving without the mask, but so I have to either increase my power, or most of the time you've got to slow the machine down a little bit. And the results are like, I did have a piece, you know, where I had a different one where I did one with mask and one without, and it's dramatic, the difference between the one that has the masking on and doesn't have the masking on.
Yeah.
The image is so much better. You find that the whiteness is a little less depending on the glass, but it works really good. And the shatter resistant glass. I can't remember. Somebody give me the name, please.
Ceramic glass?
No. The glass that's tempered glass.
Tempered glass,
I could get an image with tempered glass was with the mask. When I was doing some testing for a fridge manufacturer who was making bar fridges, and they wanted to put their logo on the front of the bar fridge. So they wanted to brand it so somebody could order a bar fridge and they could put, a logo on it or saying or whatever they wanted on it. So they had to use a transfer mask to get it to work. So,
Stephen, did you guys have a transfer mask in South Africa? Like, do you know if you guys sold this kind of mask?
Supplier that was pretty good. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, we didn't sell it. We didn't sell it that I know of. Maybe I'll stand on the correction. We didn't sell it, but all our customers had reliable suppliers of similar products.
That's interesting. Yeah, we had one customer in
Can you hear me?
yeah, the nice thing about the stuff. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah,
Sorry.
You're a little low, but.
Yeah, Stephen,
I'm just going to say
mic's a little low.
it like Mel said, it's medium. Yeah, this product is water soluble, so again, you don't have to sort of worry about peeling it and everything like that. You can just put it in a bucket of water if you wanted to, and the mask will just come off, right? So and then a lot of times the only thing you may want to do is just have a little bit of a Mr. Clean magic eraser or a small little Brillo pad, because you will get some residue from the adhesive on the mask that you'll need to clean off. But again, for me, the mask is always the best way to etch glass. I mean, if somebody, like I think we talked about this before, if somebody's not going to pay you for it, well, then you don't use the mask, right? You give them a mark, but it's always something that I always recommend. So.
Yeah, we had somebody on the chat say that they buy the stuff from eBay, something else. I just posted the comment there that they haven't tried the Trotec stuff. Would be good if Trotec had low, medium, high tack available. I don't know what that.
Well, I do use it a lot in when you're paint filling, and that's where the higher tack would come in, because the problem when you etch wood or I painted glass and everything too after the fact is the heat of the laser will cause the tack to separate from the product. So what I typically tell people to do is, once you've done your etching, then go back through and just tap down with your finger to try to get that tape to re-adhere to the material, because when you spray paint or paint fill, if that mask isn't all the way down on the material, then it will seep underneath. So again, a lot of times I'll just go over it again just to press down and then paint fill it. If you're going to, because again, it's perfect product to use for the for paint filling. I mean, I've tried some other products. Again, you got to be. There was a product called Fisker. I think it was from England, and I used that. I think it was polyester, but again, I have had some. I mean, you could use PVC product for the same thing for paint filling, but you can't use it because of the issues of the smoke and that and damage to the machine. So again, if you're make sure if you're using something other than the mask, you check out its MDS. So
perfect. Our next question is from Nilesh from Mumbai, India. Nilesh doesn't have a laser, and I guess he's just asking about the different applications of laser cutting. So I mean, this is obviously too general of a question to kind of go through. But I guess we can ask Alberto, in Italy, I mean, before COVID, what is kind of the main industries people would use lasers for?
Yeah, I mean, we have 8 main market segments over here. One is signage and displays, which is one of the best that we have. Then we have woodworking. Then we have educational, of course.
I'm a woodworker.
Textile industry, of course, it's pretty big here. The fashion industry, it's quite big over here. And then it's in job shops, a lot of job shops. So to answer such a question, it's pretty difficult, I would say. I normally tend to separate the way of explaining what a laser can do in the 3 main applications of the laser. So it's cutting, engraving, and marking. And then, there's a whole world that opens in front of your eyes, because the laser is so flexible that you can do anything you want, basically, except for a few materials that it's better that you don't process. All the rest, it's
cutting fish.
Well, speaking of fashion, I mean, in the last maybe 5-10 years in Canada, all the fashion schools are getting laser cutters and engravers. Are you guys seeing the same in Italy? Like
Sure. I mean, it's quite a consolidated technology nowadays in the fashion industry, and not only in cutting fabrics and stuff like that, but also in embroidery. In many cases, when you have a single layer material, they use the laser rather than the classic embroidery machine. So it's taking, it gives you a lot of advantages because it's just a very simple solution. I would say the only limit that the laser has is that if you use natural fabrics, then you burn it, and it gets a little bit brownish, and they do not like the smell. But there are some other equipments that we offer here in Italy. There's a local company that offers a kind of a spray machine that these machines sprays particles from diamonds. So they clean completely the surface. The cut surface is completely clean, and then there is another spray which is not
like a water jet.
It's a kind of, and then there's another spray that removes the odors, basically. So you can offer a complete solution, even though they are not very keen on using a laser because of this kind of counter effects that it gives on natural materials. With the help of side technologies, that you can solve their problems. And there's a very famous luxury company car over here in Italy. It's not Ferrari, it's another one. I cannot mention it, unfortunately, but in the area where they make the seats for the cars, they use very high quality leather, and they use a laser. Of course.
Now, do they outsource or do they?
They have internally. They have an internal area where they produce. It's all manual. Those cars are 235 basic price, €1,000 on sports cars. Of course, we're talking about sports cars. Everything is done manually by nice, good females, and the cut of the laser itself is done by laser, and they remove odor and the black part of the cut with those side technologies.
Do they promote it, or is it just?
No way.
Wow.
No way.
Hey, Lev, I think the best resource or list of different applications they can find is our YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you guys
from Canada.
Of course, yeah. That goes without saying, Mike.
If you go to Trotec Canada on YouTube, you'll see all the stuff on there. I'm just there's another question I'm going to go to for priority questions. Phil from Kelowna. I'm putting a logo on a customer supplied crib board. How do I center it on job control? I only have one chance to make it right. I don't know if you guys have job control open. If you want to show, Mike, you do.
I can't really. We're not hooked up to a machine, so we can't show the laser. But I did do those videos, on the barrel and all that, where it shows you what to do. I'll make one suggestion here for him if he wants. If he has a transfer mask, or if he's got just some masking tape, put it over the area that he wants to etch, and just run at a really, really low power so that it only etches the masking tape. And then if he's happy with where the location is, he can peel off the masking tape. But if you watch those two videos that I did, there it is, positioning on a job.
Type in Trotec position, and then this will be in-depth training how to position a laser job.
Yeah, I did that one, and that shows you how to take an image from job control or from Corel, bring it over. The other option, what you could do if you want, is to take a photograph of the board, import it into Corel Draw, and make it the size as the board, the page size, and then you can just position your artwork over top of the picture, and then send it over, delete the picture, and then just send it over and make the page size the size of the page that's in Corel. And then when you bring it over, it'll be exactly in the right spot, right?
Sometimes when I do this, I actually put a ruler down too, so that I can get the size just right, so that you can stretch it out so that 1 inch is actually 1 inch in Corel Draw as well. You just drop a ruler down, snap the picture.
But I mean, the easiest point would be to measure, like this is what Mike has, a plaque here, put a piece of masking tape, measure the center, put a crisscross, and position the laser over it.
Yeah, because you can outline the job in job control, right? But the other thing you can do if you want in job controls is you can move the laser head on the screen, right? And you can see the logo on the screen. So you can move the laser head to the edge of the image in job control, right? Like, again, you can see that I've got this great hockey team's logo on the screen here. So you can move the laser head to the edge of the C, and then you can see that on the crib board, and then you can move it over to the other side, and you can use the four corners if you really need to, or you could just outline it if you want. So with the red dot pointer. So
perfect.
But there is one there. I did the barrel right too, Lev.
Yeah.
That one has the barrel on it, and the barrel is probably there. It is there. So it's trying to get it in the middle. The idea is to put the masking tape on there, establish a zone of where you want the engraving to go, which you can just take like a pencil and just mark on the masking tape the area that you want to work with, and then just use the red dot pointer to locate your job on the board. So
perfect. We'll go to some questions here from Danny. Does Trotec offer or plan to offer an overhead camera system that allows to see in real-time design superimposed on products for proper placement and sizing before running a job, similar to a system already seen on other brands I shall not name, because in all honesty, Trotec is far superior in every way. So this is a really, really, really good question. It's definitely been on discussions at Trotec in terms of like a camera system that basically you could see it when you place. We have something like that for the Galvo machines, correct me if I'm wrong, but not for the flatbed Trotec machines. And I think the competitor that we're talking about would have multiple cameras. Now, you guys would know more about this than I do, but what is the issue with that camera system that's currently on the market? I think it's the
Glowforge.
No, it wasn't the Glowforge. It was the Iris camera system, and when you put it in the middle, it basically it's like, again, this is from what I understand. When you put it in the middle, it's accurate, but as soon as you're moving towards the sides, it starts to distort the image. So I don't know if you guys can talk about that.
Yeah, there's a technical problem in the machine that I've seen that has a camera on top of the lid, inside the machine on the lid. You basically can see the whole working area, but when you try to make a job on one of the sides, left side or not exactly in the center, the machine is not accurate, and the camera is not accurate at all. So they would need multiple cameras, and it would, the cost will be extremely high. So we did test a few camera solutions, which would work much better than this competitor, but it's still, it is on the map actually, but not yet released as a product.
Yeah, I think Trotec has a policy that they want to do something right, instead of doing something that might not be up to its standard. So I think that's why there has been that type of delay, you could say.
Yeah, if you, like I said, I've used the red dot pointer a long time, and I still think the easiest thing to do is take a picture of the product and lay it right in Corel Draw if you're really that worried. The problem with the camera is distortion and things like that, like Alberto says, and everything like that. I get people that come in here all the time to do demos, and I get one chance to hit the proper location. I'm pretty good at doing it because I have to do it all the time. And I have no problems using the red dot pointer some masking tape. You can outline the job in job control and everything like that. You can set if you want, you have the ability to set a point on the desktop with just press the F8 key. That gives you a location, so you can snap your job to that location. So I don't really have any trouble with that. I know it sounds really cool, but a lot of people, that's not the way that they run their laser machines, right? I mean, how many people have somebody walk in and say, I've got one of these, and you can't screw up? Well, a lot of times it's not hard to do it with that system. And most of the time what people want is they want some big piece of material cut down into this size, and they want a bunch of items laser engraved on this. So it sounds kind of neat, but to me, it really isn't really a big selling feature, to tell you the truth. So
yeah, Aaron mentioned, honestly, the camera system is more of a gimmick. I used a few of them, and they aren't super accurate. Doing manual layout, like Mike mentioned, is quicker and easier. And but he feels the same way about our autofocus.
Alberto might know more about this than anyone. But when you're processing textiles, there's this large textile laser cutters, and they have the Galvo red dot on the roof that project the images, so that they can get their pieces cut around the flaws, and they can actually move the pieces, in line, so that they're nesting the parts that they need to cut in real time.
Yeah, for fabrics, it's a totally different story. We normally talk about large format machines, and so you need to have, but there you have a big advantage that the tolerances are so big that you don't need to be accurate.
Yeah,
so you basically just need to cut it through and cut a part of a fabric that it has already being marked outside. So
okay. Yeah, but I always thought, like, for years and years now, I've always thought that having that same sort of system where you have the Galvo mounted somewhere on the roof or on a gantry over SP2000 or something, being able to project the image like we do on our speed marker lasers, on a flatbed would be really super good as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I just want to mention what Mike was talking about. If you type in Trotec photo jig on YouTube, this is an old video Mike made, I think, which is really good. So, Mike, if you wanted to explain, you took a picture of a knife and then you put it into Corel to cut around it, or
So what I did on this is the reason that this originally came out, and I used to use this technique all the time for doing logos and everything like that. But the reason this came out was that the gentleman bought a laser machine because he wanted to etch the knife, right? And they wanted to do a whole bunch of knives at once. So they had to make a jig for it. So what I did was I brought the picture into Corel Draw, and then basically I digitized the cut line around the actual outside of the knife to create a cut line so that you can make a jig. Now you use the same technique where you just drop in the logo on top of the product too, if you really wanted to. So instead of using it to make a cutout, then you could just use it as a positioning tool so that you get the logo in the proper place, right? So again, see, then the reason that I like to just send over the logo, and sometimes it really depends on what you're doing, but if you send over a big sheet, it's harder to move it in job control, right? If you just have the actual object, if I need to nudge it a little bit, left or right or up or down, I can do that with the, with the X and Y numbers in job control. So I can make really fine movements left and right. Sometimes when you've got a big piece on there, you try to make a movement and it hits the edge of the page, the actual laser page, right? Like the actual work page. So that's why I sort of like to send over just the actual small logo and then manipulate it that way. But this would sort of work the same way. If you imagine that this photograph was the cribbage board that this gentleman wanted to do, and then you could just stick your logo in the bottom right-hand corner or wherever it's supposed to be. Just make your page size the size of the crib board, right? Send it over, put it up in the top left-hand corner. I guess that's the easiest way of doing it. And then if you really want to check it, you can bring the laser pointer down, or you could put masking tape. I've done this many times. Put masking tape down there. Really use a small power, like 10 power, and just do an etch. And if you have to go over it twice, who cares? I mean, then at least you're getting in the exact right location. And if it's perfect, peel the tape off, adjust your power, and then run the job. It's in the right spot. So.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry, I had the next video go for my mistake. There's another question. Looking for alternatives to masking 3mm MDF. Client has snowflake patterns 30 millimeters across in high enough volume that hand masking has become a problem. Any alternative materials or masking products? Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I mean, if it's a real problem, what I would do is I'd invest in a system like we have in the back there for putting our adhesive on, which is a film system, where you put a roll of masking on there, and then you use a pressure applicator, and then put your sheets through that way, which is like a laminating. That's the word I'm looking for, a laminating machine.
And if the product's being painted afterwards, you could invest in a small drum sander, and then just don't mask the parts. Engrave or cut, and just throw the part through a small drum sander with a really fine drum, and that'll take all the smoke off as well.
Can you put masking tape on laminating machines?
I think you can, because people are using films and everything like that. So I don't think it would be a big deal.
I do it. Yeah, I do it with ours for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we put the 3M adhesive on with the laminating machine. Yeah, there it is. You put it with the laminating. So you can put lots of different types of films on there. And again, if you're using large enough volume, then that's probably the better way of doing it, because now you're not running into air bubbles and everything like that. And 3 millimeters should be within the tolerance of those silicone rollers, right? So,
yeah.
Interesting. Next question we have from Vanessa. Do you have a rotative, I guess, rotary system that can be adapted on a Rayjet 500?
Stephen?
Do we have a rotary on the R500?
No, there's nothing. Sorry. Someone muted my mic.
That was me.
There's no accessory like that for the 500.
Okay, but we have for the SP500.
Yes.
Yes,
we do. But
every single machine has a rotary option, but even the Rayjet 50 and the Rayjet 300 have rotary options, but not the Rayjet.
But not the 500.
Okay.
It would be pretty slow, but anyway, so
it would be.
Next question we have Josh from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. When sending a job to Corel to Job Control, how do I position the artwork file exactly as shown in Corel? For instance, I have a cutting board. Sorry, just gonna pull.
I think we just basically went through that.
We
already.
Went through that. So the next one is from Villas from Goa, India. Tips on adjusting air pressure and laser focal point setup. Stephen, I guess we can ask you that. Is there any tips? This person who asked does not have a Trotec, but I mean, if you could give us a general, tips for air pressure. It's not just the SP500, right? It's smaller machines as well.
Any machine can be adjusted. It's ours.
Exactly. It's really subjective. I mean, you need air or you don't need air. Most applications need air. There are some cases where you don't want air. Polishing acrylic, for example, you want low to no air, but most applications you want air. And in some applications, you don't want to have a machine that's just got a built-in small pump. You actually want external air from a proper compressor. For many applications, industrial applications on very large format machines. So it really depends on the machine and the application. It's a difficult question.
Now, would a person want to adjust it themselves or get a tech to adjust the air pressure on their machine?
It's something they would do themselves in application training and naturally experience. If you see flames, well, obviously you're going to increase your air pressure, or the air flow at least. The pressure also being the incorrect word here. It's more the amount of air flow that you have. In terms of focal point setup, well, I guess they're speaking about focusing. Again, most lasers have got a focus tool. Some have autofocus. That's, as you can see, there's mixed feelings about that. And there are some applications where you don't use true focus. In some applications, you overfocus. In other applications, you underfocus. So again, it's subjective to the machine. It's not really easy in terms of Trotec. It's an easy question to answer, and then what the application is. But generally, the rule is, yes, your laser needs to be in focus, and you use a focus tool for that. And your air pressure must be on in most cases and flowing at a rate that doesn't blow your material away, in the case of paper, for example. But it's really, I think Mike will agree, it's a touch and feel experience. It's something that comes with time.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I can add there is sometimes you don't need air assist. As Stephen said, I mean, if you're polishing acrylic, I mean, it's really something that you need to test yourself and see what works and what doesn't work. And all the machines we sell, the laser, the air flow can be adjusted, on the pump itself, on any of the speedy machines. Well, I guess on the back machine, on the 400s, and a little bit more difficult, but I mean, on the bigger machines, they all have the adjustment rate on the actual machine to adjust. So
the new 400 and the 360 have the adjustment on the gantry.
On the gantry now, which makes it even easier.
Yeah,
so,
it's just the previous 400 had the airflow adjustment at the back of the machine. On the 300 and the 100, it's easy still. It's not on the gantry, but you could, to open up the right-hand side is not such a big deal.
Yeah, I think the reason for the question is some of the compressors that people are using for some other machines, just like the airbrush compressor, right? So there's no way to regulate the pressure, but you can always buy an external regulator so you can control the air pressure.
Yeah, but that's gonna imply that the machine is, in the case of Trotec, above the speedy, the 400 series. Then it's got a gasket, and if it has a gasket, our machines have a regulator. But if it's some other machine, then you just need to purchase a regulator from your pneumatic store and add it to your system.
Is that what Aaron is saying there? I added an external air regulator to the front side of the machine so we can adjust air during a job?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And I've seen some people actually automate the whole system. You just put a solenoid on it, and it automatically turns on and off with the machine as well. Yeah,
there's electronic solutions. If you look at our Speedy 2000 and Speedy 3000, it's got an electronic airflow system which uses magnetic valves, etc. They're quite expensive for quality ones, though.
Yeah.
Interesting. Also from Villas, tips on tube maintenance and precautions. I mean,
what tube is he running? I guess.
It's not a Trotec.
Yeah, but is it a glass tube or is it a metal tube or a ceramic core tube? So,
well, can we maybe have a brief discussion on that? I mean, first of all, what tips of maintenance would you suggest for ceramic, metal, and then the glass tubes?
Well, it doesn't matter what tube technology, what manufacturer, any laser tube that's a closed system. By closed system, I mean you're not introducing any gases externally that you get on some of the very large metal cutting CO2 systems. I'm talking about closed circuit systems like your typical glass tubes, aluminum tubes, and in our case, the ceramic tubes. The number one enemy of all those tubes is heat. So if those tubes get hot, they fail. In the case of a glass tube, if it gets too hot, it's going to fail very quickly. The majority of glass tubes are actually water cooled for that reason. But if that water cooling circuit fails, or there's no safety systems like we have in our R500 glass tube systems to prevent that, that glass tube is toast. In the case of better quality tubes like your metal and your ceramic tubes, you have your air cooled and water cooled. Your most stable are always going to be the water cooled tubes, depending on the application and the environment. So if you know the tube's going to be installed in a very hot environment, or it's going to be working, say, 10, 12 hours a day on thick acrylics constantly, then naturally a water-cooled tube would be superior there. But the majority of systems are air-cooled, and so how do we prevent issues? One is your ambient environment should be between 15 and 25, no more, no less. If you look at these tubes, they have a heat sink structure. So they have fins that need to be clear of dust and debris, and you've got to make sure that the fans on those tubes, most of them have got a fan on the top and on the bottom, if not two on the top or two on the bottom, and they need to be working, number one, and they need to be completely clear. So what I recommend is to make sure your ambient environment is air conditioned and it stays constant through winter and summer, and also make sure that the tube is clean. So if you don't have a ceiling and you're in a dusty environment, once a month, just have a look and see how much dust is collecting on those fans. I find customers that clean out those heat sinks and the fan arrays with a brush and a vacuum cleaner every 6 months, their tubes are guaranteed to last longer. It's a guarantee. And then the next thing is your power supplies. The power supply failing is normally the reason why a tube fails too. So you've got to check your power supplies. They also have fans, and make sure that those power supplies are clear and clean and there's no dust in those either. And naturally, if you are looking at your power supplies, please make sure that your laser's been unplugged from your wall and don't get electrocuted. So keep dust away from your machine. And then the third thing that's critical is the distance that your machine's placed from the wall. It's no point pushing warm air back into the tube. So if your ambient environment is 31 degrees Celsius, then those fans are pretty useless. So you need to keep the ambient down and also keep the air flowing from around the laser. So I would say at least, I know it's not always possible, but your best case scenario is to have the laser about 1 meter away from the wall. So have a 1 meter of space around the laser on each side. But at minimum, I'd say at least half a meter. I've seen a lot of machines pushed right up against the wall, and so the machine just can't breathe. So those fans may be running great, but it's just regurgitating its own hot gases. So that's about the best I can do, but also understand these tubes. A lot of people don't realize that a tube is a consumable. It's not an engine that keeps on going. And if your laser was a printer, there would be ink in that tube, and that ink will run out. And so just inherently, all these tubes will eventually reach their end of life. But in terms of preserving your tube, those are the best tips I can give.
No, that was very in-depth. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good.
Get a better explanation.
That's why we have you here, Stephen.
Matthew, next week I'll make sure this thing is engraved.
Yeah, actually, mine isn't engraved either, so we'll engrave that with Coat. No worries. Actually, Roland had a good question here. Does anyone use the Z movement in job control for speedy? Very dangerous in my mind. And then I asked him to clarify. He says if you don't pay attention, you're running in the honeycomb table by setting the Z value in job control. So I think he means if you set the wrong Z value, it could hit the honeycomb table. Anyone want to comment on this?
Yeah, the especially in a Speedy 100 or a Speedy 300, that happened to me in my first week or so using Trotex, where you forgot that you didn't click honeycomb. There is a honeycomb button telling the laser, the job control, that you do have a honeycomb that's actually measured from the top of the honeycomb down to the table. And if you don't use that honeycomb button, it's going to think that you don't have a honeycomb on there, and it could crash. Now, with the invention of the 360 and the 400, with the interchangeable beds, those beds are all on the same level. And so this becomes a moot point now. That's Z. I use it all the time, especially on a flex machine, because for a flex machine, it's a different focal length for the CO2 and for the fiber. So you'll notice when you do send a CO2 job through a flex lens, a 2.85 flex lens, that bed drops down a bit and engraves. Now, if you stop that job halfway through, you're going to have to focus again. And if you have your autofocus on, it's always going to just come back up to the same point and engrave. at the right point without you having to worry about stopping or starting the job. So I do use it. I use autofocus quite often. I think it's fantastic. You just have to make sure that you follow your checklists for sending a job. Is my honeycomb button checked? Is it not? You got to be a little bit more careful before you send the job.
So
yeah, he's also saying about putting a value into the Z offset, which if I'm going to share my. Do you want me to share my screen out here?
Yeah, and Roland's using a 100R.
Yep.
Yeah. So where's my this Z offset value here? Now again, we're not hooked up on to the laser machine, but this value will display, where you are. So sometimes I'll use that Z value to measure, and then if we go into job control, I think what Roland he's talking about is the Z offset right here. So a lot of times, when we tell people to engrave trolleys, we tell them to go out of focus. Normally I'll use a positive number, so then that table goes down. But sometimes if you want to focus into the material, you need to go negative. And he's right. If you have to be very, very careful when you use that setting that you don't, if you're going to put 0.9 in there, 0.09, you don't put 0.9 or 9 and a negative, so that drives the head up too high, right? So where it actually crashes in. So
and again,
he's
if you stop,
right. Sorry, I'm just saying he's absolutely right. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why when I tell people when they first start out with their machine, the only thing that they should be doing is using the manual focus tool. I know it can be a bit of a, it's a little bit extra work. I don't think it is, but some people think it is. And I can tell you right now that everybody comes in here, they think autofocus is, it's like one of those, it's like the photo, you can see the image on the screen and everything. A lot of times it looks really neat, but in practicality, it doesn't always work.
Yeah, we always want to use the manual as well, just as a precaution.
Well, I tell people because
first.
there's one less thing you need to think about. Like you start running around, the phone's ringing, you're trying to throw something in the machine and everything like that, and you're not necessarily always thinking. So if you always use the manual focus, you eliminate that issue of driving the head in there. There are times where you need to use the Z focus for certain products where you want to move the table up in between, before you etch or maybe going from one color to another. But again, you always want to think about that stuff. You always want to sit back and think, okay, I'm moving the Z. Am I all right? Yes, I'm all right. So again, it's just something that, you want to make that extra step to check. And like I said, you get a one-man or two-man business operation, which a lot of people are, and they're thinking about a lot of other things. So that's why I always tell people manual focus is always the best. So,
Roland,
you can press the stop button too.
Okay.
Right,
so, Mike, you mentioned putting a positive number in that Z offset. 90. Do you want to do it like 90% of the time to drop the table down? But in instances where you want to move the table up, is that more for cutting thick material? Like you need to, like if you're cutting a full inch acrylic, you want to move more. Is that the only reason you would want a negative Z offset?
It's not the only reason.
Normally, I mean,
sometimes.
Not the only time, because you.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you want to come into a bowl, like say you wanted to come across, and then you wanted to go inside a bowl or a cavity type, and you want to bring the table up, then that'll be a negative number, right? So you'll come up, and then you may then need to have a separate color there with nothing in it, a blank, where it brings the table back down again, so the head can go back to the starting position, like to the top left-hand corner, right? There's our time. So there are other times where you need to bring that table up, but normally the most common one would be if you are cutting something thicker and you want to focus to the middle of the material as opposed to the top. Sorry,
James, what were you going to add?
Exactly the same thing.
Okay. Okay. So, I think we're right at the top of the hour here. I guess the conversation became a little bit more technical. We do want to mention that we have maintenance programs for tube maintenance definitely, Stephen, how often would you recommend getting a preventive maintenance check from your tech department?
Again, it depends on the duty cycle of the machine and the machine, but at least once a year for all machines.
Once a year. Alberto, what do you guys do?
At least.
Yeah, exactly the same. It's pretty much depending on the machine and the duty cycle, but we recommend once a year at least.
And what do you guys usually check in the preventive maintenance, Stephen, when you guys do these kind of PMs?
I'll keep it. I won't expand it too much, but it's all the calibrations, lubrication. In terms of cleaning, it's obviously the functional cleaning. We don't know. You're not going to spit and polish the machine for cosmetic reasons. But in terms of what I said earlier about the tube, if we see that there's too much dust, we're first going to call the customer over and show them the amount of dust that the tube's accumulated, and then warn them that there's a death sentence on that tube. So we will then clean the tube up and show the customer how to do it. But mostly it's going to be to lubricate the spindle bearings and on your Z-axis, belt adjustments if necessary. Again, duty cycle dependence, we may replace a bearing or two, and then obviously the optical alignment and a checkup on the quality of the optics themselves, the lens, the mirrors.
Yeah, and every country, every subsidiary of Trailtech has their own, warranty plan. So definitely check if your warranty plan includes a preventive maintenance check. Alberto, I don't know if you could comment anything on what's in Italy in terms of
we're basically offering every machine that has a 1-year coverage plus 1 year tow care, and the preventive maintenance is an add-on that the customer can decide whether to buy or not. We do recommend it. In some cases, we do recommend it more than the tow care plan because, it just extends the lifetime of your machine. So we basically try to offer a full package. So the machine plus the tow care.
Yeah, it's similar in Canada, exactly. Okay, so we're past the hour mark. Again, I want to thank our special guest, Alberto, for spending his Friday afternoon in...
It's me to thank you. It was a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. We have a one quick last-minute question. I guess we could get to, is the masking tape mentioned earlier in the video effective with glass and acrylic or glass only for engraving pictures? Mike, do you want a quick answer to that?
It's strictly for engraving glass. If you were using it on acrylic, then it would be there to protect it, or if you maybe want to paint fill it after. That would be what I'd use that for.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Thanks again, guys. Stay tuned for next week. And
Lev, just one thing. If he watches that video I did on acrylic, right? If you use the proper power and speed settings, you'll get a good looking image.
I see. I thought you were going to blame marketing again. So.
No. You did a great job.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.